Morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your morning to be here with us today. My name's Katie Donarski. I work at the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, and we're here today with some folks from the Dairy Business Innovation Center, as well as the Healthy Roots Collaborative, to talk about different farmer-focused grant opportunities that the Dairy Business Innovation Center offers, as well as some of the cohort-based technical assistance that Healthy Roots has been taking on. So I will turn it over now to Laura Ginsburg, who is the lead of the Dairy Business Innovation Center, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. And she's going to share some information about two of the farmer-focused grant opportunities through DBIC.
Great, thanks. And yeah, thanks for coming out this morning. Laura Ginsburg, I work for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. And my position there is that I lead our dairy development and innovation work. And part of that is the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I put together a few slides for the farmer-focused grant opportunities that we have open right now. And we can talk about whatever will help you understand the program. There we go. So just for those folks who don't know or need a refresher about what the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center is, we're one of 4 USDA funded regional centers. So the other 3 are Wisconsin, Tennessee, and California. Those are all university based. So they take a pretty different approach than us being a state-based center. And we invest in farmers and processors to promote the development, production, and marketing and distribution of dairy products. So that's like USDA's mandate to us, is that's what we have to use our money to do. Of the funds that we get from USDA, we have to put out 50% at a minimum as awards directly to dairy businesses. So either farmers, processors, or producer associations. We've received about $38.7 million to date. So of that, if you do the math, we'll be putting out at least $19 million as grants. Because we're not a university-based center, we put most of our funds into grants. So of that, we'll put close to about $35 million out into the region as grant funds or contracts for technical assistance. So the Dairy Business Innovation Center is for cow, goat, and sheep farmers and processors. So pretty much any animal that you can milk qualifies. We've had some interest in water buffalo, but we haven't funded a water buffalo project yet. Somebody asked me about camels the other day. No camel projects yet. And we represent 11 states. So essentially the whole Northeast down to Pennsylvania and Maryland, and then all the way up through Maine. And we partner pretty extensively, as you can tell, just by the host of the meeting today, with dairy sector stakeholders, extension, other state departments of ag, farmers, co-ops, producer associations, and viability and business assistance organizations. So anybody who's engaged in dairy can we either collaborate with them or they can receive funding from us. So I'm going to talk about a couple of grants. There's a lot of words on this slide. I did that because I know a lot of people are probably going to receive this as an email or as a printout. So I just wanted to make sure to put the most important information on it. So we are constantly releasing grants. We just trying to think how many just closed. I don't know. We do about between 8 and 12 opportunities a year. So if what you see today isn't of interest, it's not the only thing that we do. There will be new opportunities coming up. So for instance, we just closed a round that was focused on milk handling and storage on farm. So people could have applied for like bulk tanks or direct load systems or chillers or plate coolers. So that round is closed. We're going to reopen that. We had incredible demand. We're going to reopen it in the fall of this coming year. So this grant that's on the screen is the Farm Innovation and Alternative Management Grant. This is a brand new opportunity. We've never released this before. And this one's pretty exciting because sometimes our grants are pretty narrowly scoped, like the on-farm milk storage and handling. That's what you can apply for. In that, you can apply for lots of different things, but it has to be related to on-farm milk storage and handling. This one is specifically related to farm production strategies and thinking about innovation in that space. And we don't know what we're going to get for applications. We have some ideas, but people can apply for a lot of different things. So that's kind of important to keep in mind. Is like, if you have an idea and you think it could work, you could apply for it. You could have a conversation with us. We're totally like approachable, real people that like to talk about these things. So we encourage people to talk to us. So these projects specifically will focus on production strategies, could be milk handling and storage, utilization of technology, and young farmer engagement. So a couple of examples of that could be production strategies like adding agroforestry into a farm or different types of forage systems. Milk handling, we've had some interest, particularly from Amish and plain communities in the southern part of our region about community milk house development, where people can more efficiently and effectively bring their milk to a cooperatively owned milk house for pickup. Because if they milk, 10 or 15 cows, the truck's not going to keep stopping at their place, but they want to keep dairy farming. So thinking about milk handling in a new way. Technology, there's a lot of opportunity in the technology space. So thinking about like GPS, like geofencing. So putting collars on animals so you don't actually have to go build fence. You can keep them in a space without fence. That's getting some traction here. Thinking about other like energy efficiency technologies on farm. If you've got like curtains and fans that are climate controlled, new ways of doing that. And then young farmer engagement. So thinking about how we're going to get the next generation interested and engaged in dairy. So we got $900,000 available to this region. Eligible applicants for this round are farmers, technical service providers, and producer associations. And grants will range from $15,000 to $75,000. We do require a match for this one. It's 25%, which can be cash or in kind. So we want farmers to value their own labor. So farmer labor counts as in-kind match. And we also want them to bill their labor at a competitive rate. So if some farmer like puts in an application and says that their rate is $15 an hour, we tell them usually, that's not actually real because you're providing professional services to this project. So we help them understand the value of their own match as well. And then the projects will be about 12 to 15 months. We estimate, based on this project, with the applications closing in early February, that the projects will start in April. Give us enough time to score and review the applications. So there's 3 things that applications are required to have. Well, 2, and then 1 potential. 1 is an educational or outreach component. So innovation projects in particular that we fund, we don't want them to exist in a vacuum. We're funding these because they're innovative and forward thinking. So we want the results and the effort to be shared with the broader community. So that's a really important part. The farmer themselves does not have to provide that education, but their technical service provider could do that for them, or their producer association. A letter of support or commitment from project partners. That's a pretty key part of this as well. And then if there's any equipment purchases or installation, we need quotes for that just to see how much things are going to cost. So the application closes February 2nd, and then the grant fund payment schedule. We do our grants in a way that you, just by the fact of like signing a grant agreement, you get half of your grant funds. So you don't have to have already spent your money. You just have to commit to us that you're going to do the project. You get your payment so that you can start doing work. Mid-project, you get another 30%. Final report, you get the final 20%. So we try to make our payment schedules aligned with the project, but we do know that there are costs up front. So that's why you get that big chunk right at the beginning. And then this is the other program we have open right now that farmers are eligible to apply for. It's our food safety and certification grant. We've done this before and had quite a bit of interest in it from farmers and processors. And this grant is one of the ones that's like pretty specific. You can apply for lots of different things, but the project has to have a food safety and product quality improvement to it. So on farm, it could be something where you're reducing bacterial counts. You could be improving your milk handling so that the quality remains higher because you're chilling it faster. So there's lots of ways that farmers can apply for it. There's $225,000 available to the region. Applicants here, farmers, processors, and producer associations. Grants between $10,000 and $40,000. Again, a 25% match is required. And these projects are pretty short because usually people are buying like a piece of equipment or they're getting an audit for their food safety practices. So these are 8 to 12 month projects. We can be flexible though if people need more time, with a start date of March of 23. So again, applications must have a quote or a bid for equipment, purchases and installation, and then a clear connection to improving quality and safety of the dairy product, whether it's the raw milk produced on the farm or the finished product at the dairy plant. We need to see that connection. So we don't, some people feel like overwhelmed by the amount of information that they think that we may need. But what we need to see is just like a sentence or two about what's happening and connecting that to food safety. So it doesn't have to be pages and pages of information, but we have to understand the project. So this grant payment, because people are buying a lot of equipment, we front loaded even a little bit more. So you get 40% at the start and 40% mid-grant. So you're getting 80% of your funds within about 4 months time. And then 20% at the end of the project. So this is just a list of some of the pre-approved equipment. Because our funds are from USDA, and the USDA branch that we get our money from is the Agricultural Marketing Service, which is different than other branches of USDA. We have very specific rules about what we can and cannot fund. So the things that we can fund that we have already gotten approval for include things like bulk tanks, milk silos, pipelines, glycol chillers, farm loading systems like direct load systems, a flow stream, inline sampling, water reclamation systems, cooling equipment, heat exchangers, plate coolers, and then the installation equipment of that, or the installation of that specialized equipment. If there's things that are not on this list that people want to apply for, we very strongly encourage people to reach out to us ahead of time, because we can go to USDA and say, hey, what about this other thing? And then they can give us pre-approval. So you're not wasting your time writing an application for something that we can't actually fund. We cannot cover construction of any kind. So can be really hard if you're thinking about putting in a new bulk tank and your milk house is set for one size and you need to build a bigger one to hold your new tank. We can't pay for construction. We cannot pay for the purchase or lease of land, buildings, or facilities. General purpose equipment, which is like this term that USDA uses, which means not specific to dairy. So we can't buy things like, trying to think of something that's over $5,000. That's not a vehicle. So we can't buy a tractor because a tractor is not specific to dairy farming. It could be used for like one of any other hundreds of things. So they're pretty specific. We can lease general purpose equipment, and we can lease vehicles or trailers, but we cannot pay for the purchase of those. But if there are those costs as part of the project, they count as match. So that's kind of like an easy way to meet the match requirement, is if the grantee pays for the construction of the milk house, as an example. So successful applications, we take a lot of time to put together the request for applications, and they have a ton of information in them, including all of the application questions and exactly how we're going to score every application. So we encourage people to read through the applications, look at the questions, get a sense for what we're looking for, understand the scoring. And then if there's any questions for us, to reach out to us and just run the project by us. We can't tell you what to write in your application because we also score them along with people from across the country. But we can tell you, if a project will be eligible. Be clear, have a plan, and show us how to help your business. Again, you don't have to write a lot of length, but you do have to provide enough information that we understand what's going on. answer all of the questions. So sometimes people will just copy paste from one box to the next, but we write different questions because we're looking for different answers. And so we really encourage people to just be thoughtful about what they're putting in the fields. Include the required documentation. So if you are asking for equipment and we say you have to provide a quote, please provide a quote, because that will knock your application out of the running pretty quickly. And then know that there's always a lot of things going on, but we encourage people to submit ahead of the deadline. Usually we close our applications at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just because we want people, I mean, we don't want to be staying up late answering questions, but usually things are working pretty well in the middle of a weekday as far as like internet and whatnot. So we close them at 2. So, get it in by 1 o'clock. If your internet happens to go down, that gives you an hour to get things fixed beforehand. And then, look at the scoring criteria just to see how things are going to be scored. And you can reach out to us. I think sometimes people get nervous about talking to us because they don't know if we can provide them with information or if we're mean, but we're a pretty good group of folks. Each grant has a assigned grant person to it. So that's usually who you'd call. For the farm innovation round, it's me. For the milk handling and storage or the food safety, it's a fellow named Brockton Corbett. So all of us can be reached by phone or email or text message and can help answer questions. And I think that's it. You can find grant information at this website. We do have a monthly newsletter that we put out that has all of the opportunities that are either open or opening soon. So we time the opening of our grants to be aligned with the newsletter so that things aren't open for a long time before we announce it. And that's the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing. And there is a direct link to sign up for the newsletter if you go to our website at the bottom of the page. So that's all I've got. I don't know if there's any questions.
Laura,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of farms that potentially need to revamp their barns, and I understand you're talking about construction. Is there any facet of that revamping that could be covered?
Yeah, so if we're thinking about, say a barn is, actually we're doing a few of these right now. So if there's like a stanchion barn that's moving to a tie stall, we can pay for the purchase of the neck rail, the water bowls, the mattresses. If they need to redo their milk pipeline, we can pay for that. We just can't pay for concrete to be poured. Or if it involves, USDA described it to us once and they were like, if you have to use a hammer or like a screwdriver to assemble things, then it doesn't count unless you purchase it as a kit. So like we can pay for calf hutches, but if a farmer wants to buy lumber to build their own calf hutches, that's not allowable, even if it's cheaper. So there are some like real gray lines that we can help people navigate. So that's why it's important to talk to us. If farms are moving to like a freestall or they're modifying a freestall, we can pay for headlocks or stall dividers or mattresses or on-demand water tanks. So like all the things that would outfit the structure we can pay for, but we cannot pay for the structure.
You mentioned geofencing. Do you have any specific instances you could share? Or the other question would be the long-term maintenance of that system. Any idea what that would cost? And could that be 25% of that cost?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have just started to see geofencing come through like industry publications as being of innovation in grazing and pasture management. I don't know of anybody who's using it here now. I do know it needs a cell phone, which will limit some of those places that can be possible in Vermont or the New England. We can pay for the maintenance of the system during the grant period, or that could be used as match during the grant period. But once the grant ends, then we can have a farmer say, I'm going to buy 3 years of maintenance but the grant period is only 12 months because it goes past the grant period. So the match timing and the grant fund timing have to align. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it looks like there might be something in the chat.
Just me.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I didn't know if I should click on it.
I guess I do have a question. Like, about how much money goes to each state, or is it really just based on the applications that you get, or more applications coming from certain places?
Yeah,
Or just-
great question. So until really recently, actually until the milk handling and storage round, we had funded the most projects in Vermont, Pennsylvania, and Maine, because we have advisory groups in Maine, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. So we have a direct connection to producers and the states, like agencies, to get the word out. And that's the most important part of our work, is to make sure people know that there's money available. New York State, being the largest dairy state in our region, like really got on board with advertising in this last round. So of the 178 applications we received for the milk handling and storage grant, about 85 of them were from New York. So when we get that many from a single state, it doesn't guarantee they're going to get most of the funds, but it ended up that New York's getting about half the grants that we're making. We were able to make about 25 grant awards. So, New York is on board, but we are providing grants across the region. We've only done, I think, 1 or 2 in Connecticut. We have 1 in Rhode Island. The really small dairy states, we're not going to have a lot of grants to those states, just because they don't have many farms or processors.
Then a kind of interesting question, I think I know the answer to. I think like a lot of dairies are trying to diversify right now, but really what Dairy Business Innovation Center is to diversify within dairy, right? It isn't necessarily like help anybody get into a new product.
Exactly. Yep. So if you're gonna start processing your own milk, we can pay for that. If you want to breed your cows to beef to have higher value cross calves, we can't pay for that. We cannot pay for things like doing a pumpkin patch or a corn maze. We did some agritourism grants early on, and that was like, we were walking like a razor edge line with what we could fund. So it does have to be supporting dairy for the sake of dairy, not dairy for the sake of something else, or to like encourage people to not dairy.
Another question would be, if you were like, I noticed TSPs were listed there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you had a group of farmers that needed specific amendment blends. Could you house that, put in the application, and then work with farmers to get those blends out into the fields? Potentially something that they had never fertilized with, something that they had always ignored, but that their soil test reflects that they needed.
Yeah.
And what would be the repercussion if one of those farmers said, I gotta go out of business, or I can't do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have funded, so a technical service provider doesn't have to be an organization either. I think that's important to know. It can be a qualified individual that has a business. So we can't pay, like if Christine had a sole proprietorship that was like Christine's business, we can't just pay her. But if she has a LLC that's like Christine's Dairy Consulting, then we can pay her as a technical service provider. Then the technical service provider could work with a group of farmers as the applicant, which is why we want to make sure that they could apply in the farm innovation round. So they can hold the application, they can be the one that spends the money, but it has to benefit farms. And like soil amendments or new forage mixes are certainly an eligible use. And I think you're providing technical services for one of our contracts, right? So if so we have this group of funding that's like, we provide contracts to technical service providers to work with cohorts of farmers. And we want those cohorts to stay together for the period of time, which is 18 to 24 months. But things happen, people get sick, they decide that it just doesn't make sense for their family to stay in business. And if somebody drops out, that's totally fine. If they have purchased specialized equipment, there are like very specific federal guidelines about what to do with that equipment. But if they're just receiving services or like supplies or field inputs, and then they decide to go out of business, there's no repercussions. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to like goat versus cow dairy and different differences, or if it needs to be for human consumption versus other kind of goat products?
Yeah, so goat, everything that we do is for milk that's produced for human consumption. We cannot fund raw milk only projects. So if you are a dairy farm that's milking cows just for raw milk sales for human consumption, we cannot fund that. But if raw milk is a portion of a project, then we can fund the non-raw milk portion. So like if 10% of your dairy production is going into raw milk sales for human consumption, then we can fund 90% of whatever the project is. And we work with applicants through that process to figure it out. So we don't do like soap or lotion, but it has to be an edible product meant for human use. So like no dog food or cat food or things like that. And then goats, do you have a little bit more clarity about?
That was perfect.
Okay, I didn't know if like you wanted information about like the difference between goats and cow dairy, which I can certainly talk about. But we do have a lot of goat projects going on and expect that to continue to grow in interest. Yeah.
Let's say a farm has 2 or 3 projects they want to do, would you recommend buying one separately or one?
I think it depends on if they are connected.
Right. So let's say they're all based on increasing for this reducing grain.
Yeah, so I think you could apply for them as one. It would, I always say like, it depends on the project, and that's something that I would just encourage you to talk to us about. Because we have seen people like roll together a project and then the level of funding just isn't commensurate with the level of funding that they need. So it may be like a $50,000 grant and they're trying to do a $500,000 project, and like our grant funding isn't really going to help that project be successful in some ways. But if we can roll grants together and show that they're going to work together, then we can do that. Yeah, then it probably makes sense. If they're all going to build upon each other, then it probably makes sense to include it in an application together.
Dairy Business Innovation Center grants used as a match for other grants, like state agency of ag grants, or NRCS match, or VHCD grants. It's fine, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so the only one that I can speak to is Agency of Ag water quality grants that come from state funds. And sometimes it's hard to know. We don't expect grant applicants to know where the funding comes from. So that's where we'd say like, you should talk to us. If DBIC funds are going to be used as match, it's the other program's responsibility to say yes or no, if it's okay, because we're federal funds. And there are pretty strict rules depending on the program, if you can match federal funds with other federal funds. So I certainly don't want to say like, yeah, you can use it, to match anything when you actually, there's probably pretty limited circumstances. But for our match, we allow, if somebody's getting like pasture surface water grants from the Agency of Ag, you could use that as match. Or if it's loans or cash on hand, there's a lot of different ways to make that match come together.
I assume that match can be an NRCS. For your grant.
I think It depends. Yeah, I think that's where, we'd have to have a conversation. We did ask, rural development asked us if DBIC funds that we received through the $19 million ARPA round, because our funding has come from different rounds, could be used as match for something that they wanted to do for a value-added producer grant. And the value-added producer grant people at USDA said no, because our funds were coming from like a specific pool of federal funds. So, and I don't know how that decision-making is done. So we usually just ask. Great, yeah.
Throw in one last question. Do you have a sense of how competitive this round of applications will be, and if there's anything that interested applicants can do to make their application stand out or be a little bit more competitive in a potentially competitive pool?
The innovation round in particular, or like the food safety round? Or
For
both?
both of them, but maybe particularly.
Yeah, so sometimes it's hard to tell when it's the first time we've released something, how much interest there's going to be. I think we do, so half the funds, about $400,000, is prioritized for the farmers that are participating in cohorts, because they're getting technical assistance services for innovative farm practices already. It doesn't mean that if we only get $200,000 worth of applications from cohort farms, right, that we're just gonna like disappear the other. It's just gonna go into the general pool. So with 900,000 available, we'll probably spend it all, but I don't know if we're gonna get like 3 million in requests or like 1.5 million. For the food safety grants, last time, I think we got about twice as many applications as we funded. So I would expect it to be moderately competitive. Now that New York is like in the running, they have like 5,000 farms, so it kind of changes the calculus there. On the innovation round in particular, I think paying attention to those key pieces of it shouldn't exist on its own, right? So there should be like an outreach component, and there should be some sort of piece that is educational. And I think it would be stronger if it was with a group of farmers than just a farmer alone. So, and then having those letters of support is really key. So we just want people to, like, we like literally score the applications based on what's in the request for applications. And when people are checking all those boxes and they're providing clear information about the project, they're going to score a lot better than if we don't get letters of support and we've requested them, or if there's just not complete thoughts about what the project is. So like we have a good sense of what's going on dairy farms, but people should explain the project like they were explaining it to somebody who's kind of like new. So if you were trying to explain it to somebody who wasn't exactly sure, because we don't want to assume what's going on in somebody's farm operation. Every operation is different. So providing us with enough information to like get a sense of why this is important and why you want to do it and why it's going to benefit your farm or other farms is like pretty key.
Quick question on the outreach component. Could a farmer work with, say, their conservation district to host a workshop, and maybe that can be matched in some form to like have the partnership there?
Yeah, that would actually be like an ideal scenario where a conservation district or like a watershed group would host the event, because while some farmers are like really good at talking about projects and sharing information, a lot of farmers just don't have that experience. And so for it to be a valuable educational experience, we would love to see that partnership with a group that could host it.
Any last questions? Relieve you of your question answering duties. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'll swap over to your presentation. We get to do the fun thing.
Until I go to the slides, do I just do like up and down?
Yeah, it should. I think you can just do right and
Right and
left.
left,
And that.
Go mine.
Cool. I want that thing to go away, but.
Open chat box. Close it.
Amazing.
Yes.
So up next, we have Christine Porcaro from the Healthy Roots Collaborative, who's been doing some really interesting work with business support for dairy farmers in our Northwest region, funded through a DBIC contract. And we're gonna learn more about all of that.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Christine Porcaro, Healthy Roots Collaborative. We're a food systems program out of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. Just a little bit about Healthy Roots. We have 3 different programs, one being farm and food business support. We also have a gleaning program. So we go to farms, glean produce, and distribute to about 28 different sites in Franklin and Grand Isle County. And then we also have a farm to school program. So we take schools to farms to learn about food systems, farms, and food in Franklin and Grand Isle County. So this grant in particular through DBIC is in our farm and food business support realm. And the grant that we received earlier this year was the Business Viability and Technical Assistance Grant. And so this grant, as you see, was focused on production, sales and marketing, and conservation technical assistance. And so I'm going to go a little bit into next slide.
I don't know why.
So this was a really interesting project. It brought together a couple of different service providers, but also a couple of different farms. So the 3 farms involved in this project are Stony Pond Farm in Fairfield, Villa Farm in Barnard, Vermont, and Ayers Hill Farm and Creamery in Berkshire. And then as you'll see here, 3 service providers, one being the Healthy Roots Collaborative, Freedom and Unity Craft Consulting, Blair Johnson, and the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. To tell you a little bit about how the grant came to be, I had received an email from the Agency of Ag about this grant, and I had sent it out to farmers in our region. And Stony Pond Farm actually got in touch with me and said, I've been working with Blair Johnson on production efficiencies, developing new products. They make cheese, and she really wanted to continue to work with him. And one of the aspects of the grant was it being a group of farms that are receiving technical assistance. And so I called up Blair and was like, hey, do you know any other farms that you've been working with that would really benefit from some more technical assistance in production and product innovation? And so that's how we started to get Ayers Hill and Villa Farm on board, because they were at a stage where they were both looking to develop new products, but also looking at their current production and being like, what efficiencies could we have? What new reporting could we have in our production facility? And then from the Healthy Roots Collaborative perspective, with these new products, how can we help you market them and provide new sales outlets for them as well? And in that, FCNRCD also offered to help provide match for that project. So that was super helpful. This grant had a 25% match. And so the Conservation District has come in and provided hours to meet with farms to see what other funding and resources those farms could benefit from. Just to give you an idea of sort of the different objectives of the grant that we had, there's been research and development on new products for all of these farms. So as an example, Stony Pond Farm, when we were in discussion at the beginning of this year, or I guess end of last year, they'd been looking to do a mixed milk cheese. And so they were working with another farm in Fairfield to develop that product. And so Blair went in to do some testing to sort of see what this new product could be, some new food safety for facilities. And then I came in, actually just a little screenshot, getting an idea of what sort of sales and marketing these farms had already built for themselves, and whether we needed to create a plan from scratch or whether they had developed one 3 years ago and now it's sort of a very different landscape and what we could do to update those plans. We also have done some market access assistance. So for the skyr, goat milk skyr, developed by Villa Farm, one of the biggest issues has been transportation of the product. So a lot of times she's spending driving that product from Barnard up to Burlington. So us working to see if there were other distribution options to get her product from point A to point B. And right now, so funding we received in March this year. So just to give you an idea of where we are right now, I mentioned the mixed milk cheese from Stony Pond that actually just came out. So it's right now like in a bunch of different markets up in the Northwest Vermont area. It's called Scarlet, which is really cool. So we kind of saw the idea all the way to its execution. Another really awesome part of this program, and I think this speaks a little bit to Lauren's question about DBIC funding, being able to fund dairy projects. This project allowed me to build relationships with farms in our area. And then I realized a lot of these farms are at a really interesting part in like growth and change for their farm. And so while this funding couldn't necessarily support enterprise analysis for things not related to dairy, 2 of the farms that I'm working with have now enrolled in the VHCB Farm Viability Program and are now developing a larger business plan and enterprise analysis for other things outside of the dairy world. And so I think that that's a really big and I think awesome part of the DBIC funding is that I think it has built a really great relationship between technical assistance providers and perhaps this funding or like my skill set won't be able to answer all the questions, but I've now been connected to the farms and have been able to connect them to other resources that could be valuable in that development. Another part of this has also been cost of production analysis. So in developing a new product, seeing if you've only produced fluid milk and now we're trying to develop a new product, can you sell a product? Can you cover that cost? And is there a market for it? So really looking into that before throwing all of your eggs in that one basket, making sure you're set up for success if you're developing a new product. And that's about it. I wanted to share my information, email and phone number, and encouraging you, I think, especially with how this grant came to be, if you have an idea and you think, there might be another farm that might want to be involved in that, if Healthy Roots could be a collaborative partner in providing technical assistance, or if, again, like we don't have the answer, but we do have a partner that might be a good fit, like I'm happy to be that person to make the connection. And this grant opportunity has been really great so far. And we still have like months to go to sort of see where we'll end up, but happy to share more about the experience if you have any questions.
Questions? This is a general question for both you and Laura. Are there more cohort opportunities coming up soon? Specifically for, I guess, like larger groups?
Yeah, we will reopen the cohort contract round in the spring. We just closed one in the fall. We did one for the cohort technical assistance and for events. And then we're going to open the technical assistance one up again in the spring. And that's for at least groups of 5 farms is the minimum.
Yeah.
This question is slightly outside of the dairy aspect. Do you also work with communities, and do you also work anything with fiber? So on the flip side of dairy, it could be meat and or fiber.
So I have not, Healthy Roots I don't think has done any work with fiber, but we have worked with like farms that do produce meat. And again, I would say like if there was a farm that wanted to do an enterprise analysis on those things, again, like Healthy Roots might not be able to do it, but we would be able to connect you to a service provider that could do an analysis for that.
Just Healthy Roots work with communities, not fiber.
Communities, could you be more specific?
Like a town.
So I would say, so we primarily focus on like farm and food businesses, though we are within the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. And so we obviously work with the town, so I would say it might not be a Healthy Roots specific project, but probably would connect you to someone within the Regional Planning Commission for a town project.
Specifically about foods.
Food security, yeah, definitely. I feel like that would be within our realm, and I think it would be within Healthy Roots purview, but I think we would also bring in the Regional Planning Commission if it was working with towns specifically. And if we were bringing in private partners like farm and food businesses to engage in that project, I think Healthy Roots would be a good fit. And I guess especially if you're thinking in relationship to any like food shelves or notch clinics, stuff like that, we do a lot of food deliveries to those locations too. So are engaged in that work as well.